Hi, everybody, and welcome again to we hope will be a fun and informative webinar. Jude and I have been working on this for how long? I don't know. A long
At
time.
least maybe 3 months
3 months,
at
something
least.
like that.
And
Yeah.
then it's built off of our previous work. So yeah, a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. We've been talking like a year or so probably now.
Yeah,
And
it's been a year.
yeah. So Jude's gonna drive the presentation.
Yes, I am.
Do the clicking.
Yeah,
Yeah. Do you wanna start sharing?
cool. Sure
I,
thing.
I
Well,
think I've
welcome
clicked the
every.
buttons I need to click, so hopefully people can.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Simon. Welcome everyone. We're really glad to have you here with us. We are calling this webinar Taming the Tiger. So I'm going to kind of go on in and get it into presentation mode. If you guys will be patient with me. Oh, you know what? They have changed this a smidge, so I'm hoping we used to just have presentation mode right up here. Did anybody like a Canva freak like me and know how they changed it? No? Is this big
Sorry.
enough? Would be my question for people to see then, because I'll just go with this.
Mhm.
But they used to have a presentation mode right here,
Oh.
and I haven't, since last time I did it, they changed it. So
Hmm.
if is this okay, Simon, can everybody
I,
see
I
this
I
all
can
right?
read that text. The next page might be a bit tighter because the font's smaller, but I guess we just have to go with what we've
Okay.
got.
Well, we're going to do our best here. Thank you guys for, let me see if I,
Is it down at the lower
no,
right?
lower right. Hold on.
Those icons down there.
I can read
Present
the
full
next
screen. Thank
text.
you.
Oh,
Thank you. It was. Who said that? Thank you.
Oh,
You're an angel.
awesome.
it's Jenny.
Awesome. Okay. Welcome to Taming the Tiger, making trauma less traumatic. Uh, I'm Jude Hung, and I'm an adoptee. I am a transracial adoptee, adopted at 2 days old, a stranger adoption, all the names, all the things. And I have been facilitating trauma groups for adoptees, support groups for 5 years. So
Mm.
that just gives you a little bit of my background. I'm a coach and a Reiki master teacher.
Mm.
You guys know Simon. So I'm going to go in with just a little bit of housekeeping to start us off. Let's see. Okay. So for all of us wild tigers, this is how we're gonna handle ourselves during during this presentation. So each of us that's here is taking time out of our lives to participate. And Simon and I value your time and presence, your voice and expression. And we honor the intensity of being vulnerable and seen by others in a container like this. We honor your feelings as real and valid, even though they may be different from what others are expressing. That's okay. We ask that everyone be mindful of keeping themselves aligned to these values by please stay muted unless you're sharing, and we'll have some short times of sharing. Um, there'll be some small windows for that during this class. We suggest or offer taking notes. We invite you to take notes about all the things that you might like to share or remember, because there's really a great value in what you're experiencing and then being able to share and express it with others, being heard, being witnessed. If this option is available to you and you feel comfortable, please leave your camera on as a way of showing yourself and others that you will honor the authenticity and vulnerability that's being shared. And as always, generously pour love into yourself and into each other, holding the intentional awareness that you are doing your best. And so are they. We're all here doing our best. And I set these guidelines up because this is a container that's talking about trauma. And it's likely that everyone here has an awareness of their own trauma or an intimate relationship with trauma. And it can be really sensitive. And when we talk about these things, we never know if there could be a moment or something said by anyone here that might activate somebody's nervous system. So with that being said, if you become activated and you need to pause or go off camera, please do. We invite you to do what you need to do to care for yourself and your system. And also because of that, I'm going to do like a really quick grounding. I'll just take a second just to kind of shift us from our outside world, and all the busyness of life, just to right here, being present and being anchored in the love that we have for ourselves, because that often will give us a buffer and help us keep our nervous system calm and grounded. So with that being said, we're just gonna do what I call like 3 heart breaths. And we put our left hand over our heart. And if you are not comfortable to participate in this, or you want to go off camera as we participate in this part, please do. Left hand over heart, right hand over the left hand. I'm going to go over the instructions real quick first so that we can do it together, and I'll guide. We will take 3 nice deep breaths. And with those breaths, we're just sending a lot of love to ourselves. So we're breathing in love and exhaling any stress, any anxiousness, anything that we're coming in with. So go ahead and take a nice deep breath in through the nose and exhale out the mouth. Love in through the nose and out the mouth. In through the nose and exhale. We're going to switch our hands. We're going to do 3 more. Just let yourself lead those loving breaths in. Exhale out. 1 more. Deep in. Exhale out. And then just bring yourself to this present moment. Be here. Know that you're safe. Let your breath take its normal rhythm. Wiggle your fingers. You can bat your eyes open. And welcome, welcome. Welcome to Taming the Tiger. There we go. Many of us, and I'm kind of almost curious, but I don't want to get the chat like going. Many of us have heard of Dr. Peter Levine and his book, Awakening the Tiger. He also has this book, Healing Trauma. And, so that is where we got this metaphor from. And I'm going to read really quickly from chapter 1. Peter Levine says, trauma is the most avoided, ignored, denied, misunderstood, and untreated cause of human suffering. When I use the word trauma, I'm talking here about the often debilitating symptoms that many people suffer from in the aftermath of perceived life-threatening or overwhelming experiences. And in my experience, that pretty much describes each person on the planet. There's a spectrum of trauma out there, right? So the degree of what we are managing and navigating through is different for each of us. But trauma is like an epidemic, and it's really come into the awareness of science and medicine and even the masses in the last 10 years, probably with Dr. Vanderkolk's book, right? The Body Keeps a Score. It was a huge shift for us in our awareness of trauma and how much it is impacting individuals and our culture and society. These are the signs of trauma. As I read through this, I just want you guys to think about, do I have any of these? How much is trauma impacting my life? So irritability, anxiety, depression, are these things that you use to describe yourself? Like, I am an anxious person. I have anxiety, I struggle with depression. I used to say that all the time. Difficulty concentrating, flashbacks. This does not have to be visual flashbacks. As an adoptee, after I realized that I was carrying trauma, I gained the understanding that a lot of the emotional experiences I was having were emotional flashbacks. That's the thing, right? So we can, especially with nonverbal trauma, early childhood trauma, we have emotional flashbacks as well as those that, have like the memory with visual and picture and sound and smell. We can have all sorts of flashbacks that happen when our nervous systems become activated or triggered. Avoidance, difficulty sleeping. So our sleep patterns become interrupted, nightmares and terrors, intrusive memories, disassociation. This is a big one because trauma is a disconnector. It disconnects us from others as well as, and maybe most importantly, ourselves, our feelings, um, and nervous systems. So, Simon.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Bessel van der Kolk book only came out in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
2014.
It's been 10 years.
The Nancy Verrier's Primal Wound only came out in 1993. So, one of the challenges is with this stuff, it's newer, and we're judging 21st century, we're judging 20th century parenting, I think, a lot of the time with 21st century trauma knowledge, and that's
Yeah.
that's not fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mind muting? And so for this picture, we start, the Taming the Tiger, we have the really cute little baby cub. And then this picture is this fierce tiger. And once we come into a conscious understanding or realization of our trauma, it can feel like this. Because I remember looking back and seeing that one moment in my life had impacted every moment from that point forward. It had such long tentacles and it seemed so big, and it became my focus, of like, oh, how can I ever heal, get over uh, all of this? It felt really big. It felt like that big tiger. All right. Peter Levine also says this: trauma is a fact of life. It does not, however, have to be a life sentence. And Simon and I, like he said, we met a year ago. And when we had met, we already came to this conclusion. It does not have to be a life sentence. And so our passion is to give hope and to share what we have learned in hopes that others who feel like it's a life sentence realize that they have the power within them to shift and change and learn how to manage and navigate it so that it doesn't feel like a life sentence. We should and can get to a place where we're enjoying our lives. That's my hope for everybody.
The podcast that I released today was "Do Adoptees Want to Heal?" That was a Dr. Joyce McGuire Pavo, who's been in. She's an adoptee. She's 76. She used to have 26 therapists working under her. So, a leader in this area. Should do adoptees want to heal? And I got from that. I got to a question like, do we think healing is possible? Right? Do we think healing is possible? And the short answer is yes. But a lot of people don't believe that's possible, right?
Right. Yes. Or they think they can only get so far, right? I've seen both in the groups that I've facilitated, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe we're going to hit on it in just a moment. So, but do we believe we can heal? That's a really great question. So saying that, how is your relationship with trauma? And we're asking each person here, what is your relationship with trauma? How is your relationship with trauma? What are your beliefs that you are coming here today with around trauma? And um, what is healing? Yes, he has raised that question. So, is there anyone that would like to share what their relationship with trauma has been like and where they're at with it today?
I will say that I was raised in a good home, but did sustain trauma myself. And then I raised two adoptees, one that was conceived in rape, and one that we don't know who the biological father is. And I didn't know what I didn't know, but strange things began to happen. And I think when we don't deal with our trauma, it's really difficult to meet somebody else's. So I guess I don't know if that answers your question, but
It does. It does. I think if I'll just phrase back to you what I'm hearing is that you had your own trauma that you were carrying, and then you had these children that had their trauma, and it took realizing your own trauma and learning how to have a relationship with your trauma, resolve it to an extent so that you could uh,
try to meet them.
support,
Yes.
right? Like support your children more fully.
Right.
Yeah, more compassion, more empathy, yeah, more understanding, and maybe more tools.
Yes. Finally. I was slow on that.
Finally.
I was slow on that because I didn't know what I didn't know, and I'm still learning, and may it always be,
Okay. Yeah, I think the growth, someone had mentioned in the chat that Simon's question around healing, and as he and I had talked, it's shifted because I had when I met him, I was like, I don't like the word healing. And I'm a healer, right? Like that, I've been a massage therapist, and that's been the realm that I swim in. And I was like, I don't like that word anymore. And so for me, it's growth and transformation. Growth and transformation. Healing to me is something that's more like an acute wound. So growth and transformation. But we all get to choose that what words work for us and empower us. Um, If does anyone else want to share? And please use your Zoom hand. I should have put that in the housekeeping. It makes it easier for us. If not, I can jump in and share my relationship with trauma. It's yes, Joe, please share.
I find that I discovered, I mean, I always knew I was adopted, but when I realized that being adopted in and of itself is traumatic, which was only when I started looking into this in my, couple of years ago, in my early 50s, that I discovered that I have trauma. And so discovering that is jarring and validating in a strange way, but it's kind of discovering that this is part of you that's quite confronting in itself. And so I sort of veer from processing it to then thinking, how am I going to deal with it? And just to go back to what Simon was saying, how do you get through this? How can you get through this? But so that's really, oh sorry, I'll lower my hand. That's really my relationship with trauma. It's very new. It's a new thing. I didn't see myself as traumatized. As adopted people, I think often we don't want to make trouble. So by being vulnerable or being having needs is something you want to avoid at all costs. So Yeah, I'm in process. It's in the process.
So,
Yeah, sorry, Simon. I can't lower hands. I was looking
okay.
for it, and then it was making the presentation go back and forth. I'm sorry
Oh,
about that, Joe.
No, that's
And
fine. I could do it here.
cool.
So yeah.
Uh, Susan is asking, Simon, you've also raised the question in the past, what is healing? I, um, and what is healing, as in, how do we define it? And what heals? Two different things. And what I've discovered, so for the last 10 months on the podcast, I've been asking people about healing, and everybody's got a different definition of it. And everybody's had to find their own way through their own way to heal, are in the process of finding their way to heal. So, what we're talking about here today is the first element of a framework, a framework for thriving. And in thriving, I'm going to lump that with healing, growing, and transformation.
yeah,
So what is healing? How do we define it? And what heals? What helps us heal? What helps us heal? What helps us grow? What helps us transform? Those are kind of key questions. So um,
yes. Well, and I'll just piggyback with that and then ask Susan to share because she's got her hand up. But I think there's feel into the difference between pursuing healing and pursuing thriving. Susan, please share. And if you don't mind lowering your hand, I don't have that ability, or Simon can. Thank you.
There we go. Um, so thank you so much for this. And Robin, I also want to thank you for sharing, um, pointing out that we bring our own, or I brought my own stuff. I'm an adoptive parent. I'm also a birth grandparent. I'm also a child of an alcoholic, and also lost my brother. I had a lot of traumas before I was age 10, in my own life, not related to adoption. Um, but I think I did not realize myself that I may have been trying to heal myself through being a parent. Um, and so I needed to recognize that, and I'm still learning about that. But I also wanted to just echo this notion of thriving. When I got therapy for being a child of an alcoholic, one of the things that really helped me was this notion that I had created all these survival skills that worked for me until I was an adult, and then they kind of fell apart in terms of protecting myself. And I was just in survivor mode. And then I didn't even I remember I would have these breakdowns um, and dramas, if you will. But it's because I didn't think I deserved any attention unless I was in some kind of crisis or drama. And so I used to use the word need, and then people would disappoint me. I never allowed myself to want. I just didn't think that word could ever apply to me because the notion of thriving was so foreign to me. So on this journey, um, I think we're on the right track here, and I think this is lifelong. I'm 70 and I'm still dealing with stuff. And I'm also trying to help my adopted daughter and my birth granddaughter with just to head off that, as you said, trauma is a fact. And it comes in lots of ways, not just through adoption. I mean, there's going to be a lot of trauma in life. And then final thing I just wanted to say is something popped up in my Facebook today, which was I don't need therapy for healing my trauma. Because I'm used to that. I've been dealing with trauma all my life. I need help in dealing with accepting good things. That's where I don't have practice. And I just wanted to throw that out and sharing that with my family.
I love that, that notice, that awareness. And part of resolving, I also use the word resolving our trauma there because it has a lot of components. There's a body component, right? And an energetic component. We have to release it from our body. And because that disassociation, that disconnect, we have not built connection to the higher frequency feelings, those good feelings. We have been in survival, Susan. And so we have to build our capacity to hold joy and practice awareness around joy. And I'll just share very quickly my relationship with trauma. And if Simon wants to add his, and then we'll just move forward for the sake of time. Uh, I knew something was wrong at 17, and I started my healing journey then. And I didn't realize it was my adoption trauma until 2019. I was 51. So I've done a lot of healing work and growth work and all of this, and yet I still didn't connect this very obvious thing, probably because the stories around it, and and all this. And then, like Joe, once I realized I had trauma, like I was like, oh, this is all new. And I had a, as a massage therapist, I did read The Body Keeps the Score and didn't see myself on the pages. That's how disassociated I was. And then I dove into trauma education and learning. And what Simon likes to say is there's a lot of, how do you say it, Sean? There's trauma education is not, how do you say it, Simon? Please help me.
So I say trauma education helps us understand trauma.
Yes.
Healing
And
education helps us understand healing. Right? Today, we're talking about healing. We're going to focus on
yes,
healing education or growth education or transformation education. That's what we're here to do. Are we going to heal? Well, no, healing is doing the work. Healing is doing the work. Hopefully, there'll be some aha moments today, but they're like foundational points. They're a pointer. They're
yes,
grounding. And yeah, and my relationship with trauma is, well, it used to be a villain, and now more often it's on it's a pointer. It's rumble strips
mm,
for me going off course. It's rumble strips
yeah,
for me going off course. And 17 years in, after coming out of the fog, I'm still coming out of the fog all the time. So I'm doing this year I've been doing some somatic experiencing, and I had a hell of a breakdown with the somatic experiencer woman 2 weeks ago. And more trauma comes up to the surface and is seen and doesn't become so scary anymore.
yes, yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. All right. Oop, hold on. All right. Trauma is like a layered cake. Can you name the layers? And we created two cakes for this presentation, two pieces of cake. Simon, do you want to go into the
Yeah,
layers?
I've just finished my wife's apple cake, right? So it's a
Nice.
cake day. Um,
Maybe on your piece of paper, if you're taking notes, write down what you think the layers are, and then we'll go to the
yeah,
next slide.
the biggest thing that's going on for me right now, Jude, is that I'm looking. We're 33 minutes in, and we're on slide so, and I'm feeling under a bit of pressure about like how we're going to get through all this.
We
Um,
got this.
we got this, yeah. So yeah. we're working base up, right? So generational trauma. My birth, I found out that my biological father was in care, right? His mum died in childbirth at the birth of his younger sister. So I found that out a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago. So there's generational trauma, and we're going to see that that's in the adoptive parent trauma as well, right? We've got the
Mhm.
generational trauma, right? We've got, for us adoptees, we've got in utero trauma. So I talk about being pickled in cortisol, pickled in
Yes.
stress hormone. There's the relinquishment trauma, which most people would focus in on that one. If they didn't see that trauma is a layer cake, they would pretty much go for that. Relinquishment trauma, it is what people call the primal wound. And I have to say that I feel that like my primal wound, if I've got one right, is a paper cut compared to a lot of people out there. So I count myself very lucky on that. Life and our experiential trauma, I can I can talk a lot about being bullied as a kid, not for being adopted, but for all different things. And then like having buck teeth, like going to a posh school, being left out, being different, being made othered. And the big one for me here that nobody's talking about is re-traumatization. So I spend a lot of time looking at what people are doing on Facebook, what adoptees are doing on Facebook. And in the name of our advocacy, we are we're keen to get other people to recognize our trauma because it's so unrecognized by so many. And about 3 months ago, I felt the weight of all that landed on my shoulders on a Monday afternoon when I realized that me looking at all this stuff about trauma was reminding me of it. So re-traumatization, we're going round and round and round with this stuff. And I consider myself to have quite a good filter, and yet it's getting through. And I really concerned about that. Okay, so adoptee trauma, and then we've got a cake for adoptive parents. We don't want you to be left out of the
But he
cake.
gets a slice.
Yeah, everybody gets a slice. Yeah, yeah. You can't have my wife's because that's gone. But so generational trauma, we've touched on that already. Early childhood trauma might have some. Um, uh, Susan was talking about. I'm thinking about Jude's mum and dad got divorced when you were 5, something.
Right.
So early childhood trauma. The people talk a lot about infertility, adopted parents, coming to adoption through infertility and that being a trauma. I was thinking about that last week as we were looking at these slides together, and what it hit me like it hit me another like I'm a sensitive guy, right? So it hit me like a steam train. I was thinking about miscarriage. How many of my friends have lost their kids, lost their babies, and some of them had to. I'm getting scary bits, right? Some of them had to give birth to them. I'm like, wow, how bad, how painful that. Enormously. No way I could put that into words. Other life experience trauma, and then the other one, secondary trauma. So by secondary trauma, I mean the trauma that adoptive parents get from from raising kids with trauma. How that kind of rubs off on them. So yeah, nobody everybody gets a slice of cake, as you say. Um,
So why are we
yeah.
hopeful?
Why are we here? Why is there
We're
any hope?
here, right?
Uh,
I, well, I'll just speak for myself. I've come to a place personally where I feel very whole. That doesn't mean that I don't get activated or have work to do or things come up, but I'm enjoying my life, which I never imagined, honestly. And so I'm not special, I'm normal. And if I can and get to that place, I know we all can, that it's possible. It's possible. Trauma does not have to have that front row driver's seat of my life forever, right? Well,
Yeah.
okay. So this is it. This is a quote from Simon. So Simon, I'm gonna hand it to you.
Yeah. So we're saying we're coming this metaphor of trauma. So trauma's a cake, but we're the cake stand. So what I'm getting at here is we are not our trauma. So I give you a gazillion metaphors. Let me give you another one. Trauma is a toxic cocktail of insecurity, fear, shame, and terror. But we're the glass, we're the cocktail glass, not its contents. Right? We are not our trauma. It, and you can get that that can be a bumper sticker, a nice bumper sticker. It can be a theory or an idea that lands in our heads. It can be something that we get in our hearts, or it can be something that we get in our bones. This separation. Getting in the head doesn't do anything. Getting in the heart, now we're starting to talk, but getting it in our bones is the game changer. We are not our trauma.
Yeah, that aha is truly a game changer. And for me was a huge shifting moment. I call it, es- especially for those that have early childhood trauma, we go into our survival mode, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And the earlier that those are invoked in our life, the more likely that our identity gets tied and tangled up with our trauma. And so it becomes very challenging to separate out that we are not the cake. And the cake gets really mushed into our narratives and our belief systems. So that aha is huge. And in my experience, is a key to really stepping into thriving.
So it's not just me that's saying this.
Sorry about that.
It's not just me that's saying this. So I credit Dick Schwartz, the founder of IFS, Internal Family Systems.
Mhm.
Great book. No bad parts. Right. Internal family systems. There's the uppercase S is untraumatized. The trauma is in the parts, right? The trauma is in the parts, not the uppercase S self. So when I say we are not our trauma, I mean uppercase W, we. When I say I am not my trauma, I mean uppercase I. We're talking about the uppercase S, self, right? That is concealed by our trauma. It feels like trauma has consumed us, but actually trauma has concealed us. It's hidden us. It's hidden us. It hasn't harmed us.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarity. And it's really important because the impact of it does show up in our lives and it is felt in the body, right? Yet our self is separate. And so it's reconnecting to that self. Thanks. All right. So how does understanding that we are not our trauma benefit us? Do you want to share some, Simon?
Hope,
Real quick, just
hope,
hope.
hope. It gives us
Hope.
breathing space,
Mhm.
breathing space. It's a glimpse. It's a glimpse of peace. It's a glimpse of calm. It's a glimpse of happiness. It's a glimpse of security. And it opens up. The gap opens up. The deeper we get it.
Yeah.
And I listen to this sort of stuff, right? 2 hours a day, every day. So, and I'm still learning, right? So it gets on, it keeps on getting bigger. But what I'm trying to do just today is to give you a glimpse, a glimpse of the difference between the trauma the trauma that you feel, the trauma that your kids feel. Let's stay with you. I'm giving you a glimpse of between the trauma that you feel and the essence of who you are, because the two completely different things.
Yes. It's a beginning to connect with the capital self, S self. So
To identify, I would say it's
yeah,
right. So
yeah.
let me give you another one. Right. We asked the question, what's your relationship with trauma? Relationships are only possible between two things or two people, or one person, one thing, right? You couldn't have a relationship with your trauma if you were your trauma.
Till you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So what our journey toward self often is, and with trauma, it is a journey of taking what has been unconscious in us and deriving our life and making it conscious and bringing it into our awareness so that we can shift and make changes and make different choices that lead us toward thriving. Hold on, I'm going to read this. So I'm going to move our little faces to this iceberg is our conscious and our unconscious, our subconscious. So above the water represents the conscious mind. It is 5% of our perception and behavior, just 5. It goes at a speed of about 130 miles per hour and about 2,000 bits per second. So that's information. Yet below that water line represents our subconscious, our unconscious mind that controls 95% of our perception and behavior. And it goes at a speed of about 100,000 miles an hour, so much quicker, and 400 billion bits per second. So, we think that we have all this awareness around our choices and these behavior patterns, but we don't. So making and bringing things that are unconscious into consciousness, right? Like even this fact that we are not our trauma and bringing that to our consciousness shifts and empowers us in our choice making and putting us in more and more in the driver's seat. It's a process. So that's part of it. Okay, metaphor. I'm going to let Simon share a little bit about the power of metaphor. He's the metaphor king.
So, the metaphor that this idea, this we're going to talk about coming out of the fog. That's a metaphor. Okay. So, coming out of the fog is a metaphor for the movement of something that was in our unconscious mind into something that's in our conscious mind. So, Joe Lear talked about coming out of the fog, right? So, it's becoming aware of stuff. Once we become aware of stuff, then we can do something about it. Whilst it's unaware, we can't. Metaphors are a way. I'll use a metaphor to explain the metaphor, right? So think of the metaphor of the invisible man, right? The movie, The Invisible Man. Things like trauma are abstract concepts, and our head can't get there. We can't get our heads around something that isn't concrete. Metaphors make the abstract concrete, and then we can get our heads around them. So the primal wound is a metaphor. When I heard about the primal wound, I thought this explained everything. But the big transformation for me was when I shifted from, I felt primarily wounded. And then at a point, I had this shift to realizing that I was fundamentally unwoundable, right? So it's an insight, a shift, an aha moment. So the metaphors make what is abstract concrete so that we can talk about. The cake is a metaphor. Trauma or hair cake. Yeah. Normally we talk about adoptees coming out of the fog. But Beth Siverson, fellow podcaster, she's an adoptive mum, Unraveling Adoption, great podcast. She's been on mine, I've been on hers. She talked about coming out of the adoptive parents' fog. So that's when parents become aware of the fact that their kids traumatized, right? So I like to extend metaphors. So on the left hand, we've got this woman here she's in the fog. When the fog lifts, what do we see? We see the storm that is trauma. Okay, we see the storm that is trauma. That's a metaphor. And then there's a lightning bolt of insight when we realize that we are the cloud. Sorry, we are the sky, not the cloud. Right? So we are another metaphor. I'm telling you we're telling you as many ways that we can that you are not your trauma. The trauma is the clouds. You are the sky. The sky is unwoundable. The wound is in the cloud. However, before you came out of the fog, you couldn't see the trauma clearly. Lightning bolt of inspiration, insight, epiphany moment takes us from the shift from primarily wounded or believing that we are our trauma to seeing that we are not our trauma.
We'll do our stories really quick. We just want to share those lightning bolt moments, right, that changed our lives. So for me, I referenced it 2019 is when I came out of the fog. That's when I recognized that I had this in utero and relinquishment trauma. I had done 23andMe. I wrote my biological mother as a result of being able to contact, get information. And on June 4th, I got a letter from her. And 2 days later, I began bawling and crying, and out of my 51-year-old mouth came, I want my mommy. And because I was doing the work that I do, I knew I started Googling, right, adoption trauma, because I knew then, and I found quite a bit, and it was astonishing. So that was my aha moment. And what the body keeps the score moment is I was relinquished at 2 days old. So it makes sense that it was 2 days later. Right. So that was my aha. And then that shifted me to really begin looking and studying trauma. And then in 2021, I had my aha of like, my identity is not this, it's totally separate. And so these aha moments and the power of metaphor to bring them and help us with them is really potent, right? Because those are things that begin to shift our perceptions of our reality, and that shifts how we interact with life. Simon?
Yeah, I mean, I've been sharing lots of stories, and I think we tight.
Okay.
I would say last year's big aha moment was all these adoptees who are therapists kept on telling me that it's pre-verbal, it's pre-verbal. So that's when I went back into the when I dialed up my learning activities and yeah, and continue to do that. It is a lifelong journey, and that's a good thing because that means it just gets better.
Indeed. So, how does seeing your unwoundable essence benefit you? Um, I can name a few, right? And Simon can piggyback. For me, seeing that part began a journey of connecting with what we call like my wild self, my most authentic self, more and more. And so then I could make choices that align with that make me feel better, things that make me feel better, that were align my life to be more true with who I am and uh, to feel more whole and connected and have healthier relationships. It's actually shifted and benefited me quite a bit in a relatively short amount of time, 2021 to now. Um, so Simon, what do you have to add?
I would say it's an ever increasing felt sense of security,
Yeah,
safety.
yeah. One thing I'll hit on really quick before moving on is the first two things that happened for me after that was I immediately understood I needed to connect with a felt sense of safety and then cultivate a felt sense of belonging. And I don't think I could have done that until I had this realization. So, and those were powerful changes for me. Okay, so thrive. Really, we're inviting you guys to thrive, right? Literally and figuratively. Simon.
So what we're running is a 6-week course, webinar a week, right? On Thursdays. And today we've skipped through a bit of Taming the Tiger. So next week we'll go deep, Taming the Tiger. We'll move on to looking at healing. So that's the healing education part. The next bit is resilience. So the resilience part is all about bouncing back better. The fourth bit is about our identity. And this is understanding our uppercase as self. And it's also about self-esteem. Because the biggest challenge, or one of the biggest challenges that adult adoptees have, is that we don't feel that we're good enough, right? So the diamond is the antidote It's the opposite of the trash can, garbage can, bin. V is vision for the future. So whilst we are firefighting with our trauma, we haven't got a vision for the future. So V is about creating a vision for the future that's gonna move us forward. So Robin's talked about being she's a life coach. Coaching is about visions and helping people achieve vision, right? So this is about a vision for the future. And then E, the last one, session is about empowering others. So for adoptive parents, that's about empowering our adoptive kids. And for adoptees, we get to a point on our growth journey, our healing journey, our transformative journey, when we want to help others, right? So that's why Jude and I are here. Right? So the last one is all about empowering others. And that's it. Next one. So 6 webinars, 90 minutes each. So we've got more. Today we've only done 60 minutes, so we've got more time to breathe, more time for conversation. 60 minutes of the teaching stuff, some Q&As at the end. Want to make it really affordable, so it's $99 or £78. That's for the 6 webinars, right? Every Thursday for 6 weeks. So we start at 4 p.m. UK next week, and then it moved to 5 p.m. Our clocks change differently in the UK to the US. And if you want to book your place, go to thrivingadoptees.com. And I put a link in there. Oh, yeah. I thought I'd done that.
Lincoln. Yeah, and while he's looking at that, I'll just say the Taming the Tiger for that you guys have just experienced, it's a taster, so it is a brief, it's different than the Taming the Tiger that we would be doing together in Thrive.
So
there's a little overlap, but it's different.
So if you want to book a place, go to thrivingadoptees.com. If you scroll down, you'll see a picture that says Thrive course. And then there's some descriptions of the 6 webinars, so you can get a feel for what's involved in each of those weeks. And then there's another picture, and it's got it says Thrive course. If you press that button there, click on that button there, it'll take you through to Eventbrite, right? So Eventbrite, and you can pay the £78 or the $99 there. And that's for the whole of the 6-week course. It doesn't quite look like that with Eventbrite because I couldn't figure out how to set it up. It's £78 for the all 6 courses because we wanted to make it really affordable.
Accessible. Yeah.
So is anybody want to ask any questions?
Yes, just to make sure, I did put it in the chat, but it's probably hard to keep track. If I register and pay and travel, which I do quite often, am I able to access all of the classes?
Yes.
Okay.
All the
Right.
webinars are recorded.
Perfect. Thank
All
you.
the webinars are recorded and they will be shared. So
Mm-hmm.
you will get a copy of today's webinar tomorrow when I've uploaded it to YouTube and stuff, and that will be public so everybody can view that. Because when you pay for the webinars, if you sign up for the course, the Thrive course,
Yes.
those webinars will be private. So only the people that
Very good.
that have paid for the course will be able to visit those. And we'll also send, along with the webinars, we'll also send you the slides from today. So you get the slides for every session as well.
Thank you so much. This has been very helpful.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for just coming and being with us and for sharing with us your time and your experiences.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
All right,
Oh,
everybody.
appreciate. Annie says that she
Thank
appreciates
you.
the
Yeah,
dedication and caring. Yeah, that's great. That's why we're here, right? That's why we're here.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, well, we look forward to seeing you guys again soon, and have a good rest of your day.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.